So it's perhaps a sad day for the trusty chunky Boxnaut. Perhaps one of 40k's most recognisable kits to date is finally getting put out to pasture. Seems that Games Workshop feel that the Primaris Space Marines have eclipsed him with the release of their Dreadnoughts. Hello and welcome back to Warspecs Tactics, where today I wanted to focus on the removal of 3 Space Marine kits, though perhaps most notably 40k's iconic Dreadnought kit, which has been around for a seriously long time, and I'm sure holds a fair bit of nostalgia for a lot of people watching. In a recent article earlier today, Games Workshop announced the retirement of really quite a lot of kits. There's both these 3 Space Marine ones and also a whole bunch of Forge World stuff, though I thought I'd cover the Forge World things in a different video, as I kind of feel like that's a different sort of trend going on within Games Workshop, and it perhaps hints at a new direction for Forge World. I'll hopefully cover that sometime over the next 24 hours or so, but until then I thought we'd focus on the Space Marines. As well as just the removal of these kits, Games Workshop have given us a few hints for the future. Overall, the headline news of Games Workshop's article is that basically 3 Space Marine kits are being retired, the Space Marine Terminators and Stern Guard, which are both kind of interesting in their own way, but maybe expected with Leviathan. The biggest news is that the classic Dreadnought kit is going away, but on top of that they've given us 2 more hints that other things are going to be dropped in the future. For the classic Dreadnought, apparently the other variants are going to remain, it just literally is that one kit that's going away, at least for the moment. And then for the Stern Guard and Terminators, it's likely that we'll be getting a full multi-part plastic kit, an equivalent of those monopose ones that we'll have in the Leviathan box, so hopefully they should be replaced in short order. Alongside the removed units, they did confirm that Legends will be very much a thing in Warhammer 40k 10th edition. So far they have said that it's coming, but haven't really said how extensive it's going to be or anything. And I feel like at least a few people will be kind of interested as to what that document's going to contain. Legends are Warhammer 40k's legacy rules, making the datasheets to keep classic units playable in a new edition when all the stats are changing. And I think that it's quite a good move for Games Workshop, as it actually means they don't just invalidate units straight away. You can still play with them in more casual games. The general idea behind Warhammer Legends is that you'll still have some basic support for older models, and you'll actually be able to play with their datasheets, but they won't have ongoing balance checks and things, and generally aren't really recommended for things like competitive events or tournaments, definitely a bit more casual in nature. I feel like one of the biggest questions that we have for Legends in 10th edition is how far back they go. Will they be doing everything that they've ever made a miniature for, as with all the Legends in 8th and 9th? Or will we see a whole bunch of those just go away altogether, and they focus their Legends rules on the things that are being retired this time round? Getting into the actual kits that are being retired though, and the classic Dreadnought I think is perhaps the biggest surprise out of the 3. This guy's technically the Castaferum Dreadnought I believe, and pretty iconic in Warhammer 40k artwork and lore altogether. Maybe one of the most recognisable things in the setting. There's maybe not a lot more 40k than a big stomping walking coffin walking up to you and blowing you away with great big powerful weapons and a power fist. This guy really does feel like the miniature that they were modelling the things like the Redemptor Dreadnought on, basically a bigger, badder version of that and more upscaled. Now they've released the patterns for the Redemptor, the Brutalis, and also the Ballistus Dreadnought to cover a bunch of different loadouts. I guess the feeling is that they've fully updated this one kit. It's basically a Dreadnought getting upscaled and a bigger, snazzier model now, never mind any Primaris shenanigans. I'd guess from the way that this guy's been web store only for a really good long time that they probably weren't selling loads and loads of him. I suspect that a lot of people who are looking to pick up a Dreadnought might be tempted to pick up the Venerable Dreadnought kit, which is a fair bit more detailed and a bit more recent than this one. It does sound just another step in the slow trickle of phasing things out. Apparently the other variants aren't going away yet, so you'd still be able to pick up the Venerable Dreadnought, the Wolfen Dreadnought, the Blood Angels Librarian Dreadnought and things like that. It's just literally this one model that's going. I guess they probably wouldn't be pulling those kits until they get something Primaris to replace them, but I can't help but think it might have them just a little bit on the worried side if the base kit that they're sort of designed off is going away. It's kind of interesting for the Dreadnought rules-wise. I guess it'd only be the Venerable Dreadnought that will be getting the 10th edition rules, and this guy would not. So I guess you'd be able to choose between the Venerable Dreadnought or the Redemptor chassis now. In reality, I suppose rules-wise, it's not going to be the biggest loss in the world. I feel like if you can just field all the Venerable Dreadnought loadouts, you can basically still run this model in pretty much the same way. In my experience, really quite a lot of people tended to use the Venerable Dreadnought datasheet anyway. It allowed you to hit on 2s and gave you a 6+ feel no pain, usually worth it for the extra points that you paid. Still though, I'll be interested to hear your thoughts on this. How are you feeling about this icon of 40k being retired? Has its time come to give way to the newer, bigger, stompier Dreadnoughts, or should this guy be preserved for antiquity and keeping that Dreadnought class? Otherwise, and perhaps a lot less surprising, the Stern Guard Veterans and the Space Marine Terminator kits, they're both going away. And as mentioned, I feel like it really does underline the fact that we are indeed getting multi-part plastic kits for these. They're almost certainly not going to be stuck with things like the Space Marine Outriders or the Suppressors, where they basically just have the monobows option available. The Terminators have perhaps seen a bit more of a traditional 40k update, much like many other factions would get. Literally the same models pretty much, but with better scaling and a bit more polished. Looks like we'll get a updated version of them to look forward to. Judging by the datasheet of the Terminators, it still looks like you'll have access to the same options that they had before: heavy flamers, cyclone missile launchers, and chain fists. It seems that Games Workshop isn't giving us any further teaser of Assault Terminators yet. They haven't said that that kit's being retired at all. I still think, though, that given that they're updating the base Terminators, there's a very decent chance that we get an updated Assault Squad at the same time. Judging by the Terminator Captain datasheet, seems highly likely that we get a new multi-part Terminator Captain due to the amount of war gear he can take. As I've talked about before in other videos, the Stern Guard are a bit more of an interesting case than the Terminators, as now I suppose along with the Dreadnought, they're basically having their firstborn miniatures just directly replaced by Primaris ones, something that hasn't really happened a whole load in the past. Games Workshop have usually released parallel Primaris releases, but not just literally gone for their direct replacement method. They had already confirmed in interviews that the old kit would be going away, and the new Primaris one, that would be the main Stern Guard kit. They didn't call them Primaris Stern Guard veterans, they simply called them Stern Guard veterans, and I feel like with similar war gear and appearance, you'd still be able to play with the firstborn models. So if you do happen to have a whole bunch of them already painted up, there's no need for you to update them unless you want to. Finally, when talking about Games Workshop's range of Space Marines, they gave us a couple of other hints about other things being retired. And the first one's a bit weird, as it basically comes from them saying that many other things aren't being retired, including tactical marines. The paragraph kind of implies tongue-in-cheek that heretical elements on the internet are circulating rumours of Firstborn going away, and basically confirmed that standard tactical marines and things, they'll be staying at least for now. We did already know that from Warhammer Fest interviews, to be fair. They had said that the Tactical Marine kit was a popular one, and there were no current plans to immediately take it out of circulation or anything. But I feel like their choice of phrase is pretty odd. It's the way that they say many classic kits aren't being retired, which doesn't exactly imply that all of them are, or even most of them. I certainly think that some people will miss some old Firstborn kits more than others. A fair few people who joined the hobby a bit more recently and quite like the aesthetic of the Primaris Marines, they often aren't too bothered about some of the relics going away. But for people who really do like the Firstborn range and don't want to see it depleted too much, the phrase many kits aren't going isn't exactly reassuring. You could certainly have that be true and still lose a whole ton of them. Finally, again just looking at the clues from the article, we may just have one hint of another classic kit potentially going away, as the article has a big section talking about legends in Warhammer 40k 10th edition, and it seems that the picture that they choose to illustrate legends with is this picture of the Ultramarines on a guard. Just kind of curious, that one, as these guys are currently on sale and are a current unit that you can play in game. If these are getting moved to Legends though, that does at least give us a bit of a hint that neither of those might be the case in the future. Can't really read too far into it, and I believe there was a variant Legends datasheet for a different version of Honor Guard, but I can't help but think that they probably wouldn't use current miniatures to illustrate Legends unless something might be changing for these guys in the future. Previously, they've often used that chaplain on a bike for an example of Legends. He was a particularly good example of that until they decided to release that new Primaris chaplain on bike. So anyway, let me know what you think about the retired Dreadnought, the Stone Garden Terminator updates, plus the potential of other Space Marines going to Legends then. Look forward to hearing your thoughts down in the comments. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, or I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming. I do tend to post new ones just about every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked in the video description below if you'd like to help support. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.